imagine you are managing a multi-million-dollar elite soccer team.
High stakes right out of the gate.
Right, exactly. So it's a Tuesday, and you have this massive season-defining game coming up on Thursday.
Okay.
But you desperately need to know if your star midfielder's cardiovascular fitness is actually peaking.
Which is a very real problem coaches face.
Yeah, and to find out, the gold standard of sports science says you need to put him on a motorized treadmill, right? Strap a mask to his face and basically force him to run at ever-increasing speeds until he literally collapses from total physical exhaustion.
Which is, the absolute last thing you want to do to a player.
Obviously. You cannot do that 2 days before a match. But what if the consumer smartwatch that's already sitting on his wrist could give you that exact same physiological data while he just goes for a light 10-minute jog?
Now that is the holy grail.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive, because we are looking at a landmark study that tests this exact premise.
And it's a really well-designed one, too.
Yeah, it is. The paper is titled Assessment of Maximum Oxygen Uptake in Elite Youth Soccer Players, a comparative analysis of smartwatch technology, Yoyo Intermittent Recovery Test 2, and Respiratory Gas Analysis.
Quite the mouthful.
A bit of a mouthful, yeah. It was authored by Peter Düking, Ludwig, Stefan Altmann, Maximiliane Thron, Philipp Kunz, and Billy Sperlich.
Right.
And it was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine on June 1st, 2024. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out if that standard consumer smartwatch can genuinely replace those exhausting, expensive lab tests.
And, it is a critical piece of literature to examine, especially with this massive explosion in the wearable tech market.
Oh, totally. They're everywhere now.
Exactly. We see digital health companies making these incredibly bold marketing claims, right, about their devices being able to measure deep physiological metrics.
Yeah, like medical grade claims almost.
Yes, but this is a largely unregulated space. Those marketing claims, they frequently outpace the actual peer-reviewed evidence.
Which is a bit scary if you're relying on them.
Exactly. So empirical validation studies, like the one we're dissecting today, they force the industry to answer a fundamental question. Are these sleek wristbands actually giving sports practitioners valid, actionable data?
Or are they just, providing very convincing, very expensive estimates?
Precisely.
So to understand the stakes here, we first have to understand the specific metric this entire study revolves around, which is VO₂max.
Right, the big one.
Yeah. And for anyone not spending their weekends reading sports physiology journals, think of the human cardiovascular system like a city's industrial supply chain.
I like this analogy.
Thanks. So your lungs are the shipping ports, right? Pulling in the raw materials, which in this case is oxygen.
Okay.
Your heart and blood vessels are the highway system transporting that cargo. And your muscle cells are the factories, burning that oxygen alongside fuel to create explosive, sustained running power.
That's a great way to visualize it.
So VO₂max measures the absolute maximum tonnage of cargo those factories can process per minute before the entire supply chain backs up and the system fails.
Right. So the higher a soccer player's VO₂max, the more high-speed running they can sustain over a grueling 90-minute match.
Exactly.
And that supply chain analogy perfectly illustrates why accurately measuring that maximum capacity is, a primary obsession for elite coaches.
It's everything to them.
It is. It's the ultimate indicator of whether your cardiovascular training program is actually generating biological adaptations. But the challenge has always been the method of measurement.
Right, the treadmill test.
Yeah, the undisputed gold standard is a continuous ramp test to volitional exhaustion. You place the athlete on a treadmill, and every single minute you increase either the speed or the incline.
Sounds miserable.
Oh, it is. You push them until their physiological supply chain completely breaks down and they literally cannot physically take another step.
And while they're running, they have to wear this highly specialized respiratory gas analyzer.
Right, the mask.
Yeah. In this specific experiment, the researchers utilized a device called the Cortex MetaMax 3B.
Very high-end gear.
Oh, yeah. It covers the nose and mouth, measuring breath-by-breath gas exchange. It actually calculates the precise molecular makeup of every single inhalation and exhalation.
Wow.
Yeah, so it knows exactly how much oxygen the body is absorbing and how much carbon dioxide it's producing as a byproduct.
And recent analyses show this specific hardware has a profoundly low error rate, right? Something like 1.6%.
Yeah, around 1.6%. It's incredibly precise. But, it requires highly trained personnel to operate. The equipment is insanely expensive, and it completely obliterates an athlete's physical readiness for days.
Right, which brings us to the workaround. Because the sports science community recognized decades ago that you cannot run professional athletes to absolute failure on a regular basis.
They just destroy your own team.
Exactly. So that necessity birthed a series of field test workarounds. And the most prominent alternative in the soccer world is the Yoyo Intermittent Recovery Test 2.
Oh, the YYR2. I remember doing that.
Yeah, commonly known as the beep test. It was designed to mimic the start-and-stop nature of team sports. You place 2 cones 20 meters apart on the pitch. An audio track plays a series of beeps, and the players must sprint to the far cone and back before the next beep sounds.
And it gets faster and faster, right?
It does. The interval between beeps constantly shrinks, forcing the players to run faster, interspersed with just a brief 10-second active jogging recovery.
Okay, but I have a massive problem with the logic behind using the YYR2 as a solution here.
Oh.
What's that?
Well, the whole point of moving away from the treadmill was to avoid fatiguing the athletes during a busy competitive season, right?
Right.
But the beep test is still a maximal effort test. You are still forcing the players to sprint back and forth until their legs give out and they collapse on the grass.
It's true.
So you haven't solved the fatigue problem at all. You've just, moved the exhaustion from the laboratory to the practice field.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and the researchers in this study share that exact concern. Plus, field tests introduce a cascade of external variables that degrade the integrity of the data.
Like what? Weather. Weather is a big one. The researchers highlight that YYR2 results are heavily skewed by the running surface. Natural grass yields different results than artificial turf.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
The athlete's nutritional status, the ambient temperature, the time of day, even the provision of verbal encouragement completely alters the outcome.
Wait, really? Just yelling at them changes the data.
Oh, absolutely. If a coach is standing on the sidelines screaming at a player to push through the pain, that player will run further, which artificially inflates their diagnostic data.
Wow, so the data gets muddy.
Exactly. The field desperately needs a tool that looks under the hood of the athlete's biological engine without forcing them to redline the vehicle.
And that structural flaw in sports science is what makes the design of this 2024 study so compelling.
They were looking for that non-fatiguing alternative.
Right. The researchers set out to see if the smartwatch could provide that holy grail, highly accurate data without the exhaustion.
So how did they set it up?
They recruited 24 healthy male youth soccer players from an elite academy. These are Tier 3 highly trained athletes who've been in the academy system for over 3 years.
Okay, so very fit guys.
Super fit. And they put them through 4 distinct testing days over a week-and-a-half period.
Just to compare all the methods directly.
Exactly. Day 1 was the grueling baseline, the gold standard treadmill test with that breath-by-breath gas analyzer. This gave them their true VO₂max and their true maximum heart rate.
And then day 2?
Day 2 was the YYR2 beep test out on the soccer pitch.
So exhausting them again.
Yep. But then days 3 and 4 introduced the experimental variable.
The smartwatch.
Yes. The researchers utilized a Garmin Forerunner 245 smartwatch running software version 13.00.
And the protocol here was fascinating in its simplicity, right?
It really was. They didn't subject the players to another maximal effort at all. Instead, on both of those days, the players just performed a 10-minute warm-up run before their standard soccer practice.
That's it, just a warm-up.
It's to warm up. The only physiological requirement was that they maintain a constant pace and keep their heart rate above 70% of their maximum for several minutes.
Now, there is a massive operational detail here that fundamentally separates this scientific study from how a normal consumer uses a smartwatch.
Yes, the heart rate input.
Exactly. The researchers did not allow the watch to guess the player's maximum heart rates using those generic age-based formulas like subtracting your age from 220.
Which is what everyone does when they buy a watch.
Right, but it's wildly inaccurate for elite athletes. So they took the pristine, laboratory-verified maximum heart rate from that grueling day 1 treadmill test, and they manually programmed that specific integer into the smartwatch for each individual player.
They fed the algorithm the absolute best possible starting data to give it a fighting chance.
Which is a brilliant methodological choice. You have to isolate the variables.
Right.
If the smartwatch's final VO₂max estimation is wildly inaccurate, the researchers need to know it was a failure of the algorithm itself, not just a failure caused by bad baseline data.
Makes total sense. But having a pristine testing environment doesn't matter if the hardware physically cannot read the player's pulse.
Yes. The exclusion criteria.
This is easily one of the most fascinating intersections of human biology and wearable tech in this entire paper. The researchers had to ban certain players from the study entirely just because of how their skin looked.
Meaning they had to exclude players with wrist tattoos.
Yes, no wrist tattoos allowed. And to understand why ink on your arm ruins cardiovascular data, you have to look at the mechanism of photoplethysmography, or PPG.
Which is the technology powering almost every smartwatch on the market today.
Exactly. The watch fires a light, usually a green LED, directly into your skin, and a sensor measures how much of that light reflects back.
Okay.
Hemoglobin, the protein in your blood that carries oxygen, absorbs green light. So every time your heart beats, a surge of blood rushes through the microvascular bed in your wrist.
So more blood means more hemoglobin.
Right. Which means more green light is absorbed and less reflects back to the sensor. Between beats, blood volume drops, and more light reflects back. The watch basically calculates your pulse by reading those microfluctuations millions of times.
But heavy tattoo ink, especially dark pigments, acts like a biological brick wall.
Totally. It scatters and absorbs the green light before it ever reaches the blood vessels, completely blinding the optical sensor.
It really serves as a stark reminder of the physical limitations of digital health.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, the downstream algorithms can be the most sophisticated mathematical models on the planet. But if the raw data collection is compromised by something as simple as skin pigmentation or a sleeve tattoo, the entire system collapses.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly, garbage in, garbage out.
So by excluding tattooed players and manually entering verified heart rates, the researchers created this flawless testing scenario. They compared the gold standard lab test against the exhausting beep test and against the non-fatiguing 10-minute smartwatch warm-up.
And to judge the winner, they utilized a statistical metric called MAPE, right? Mean absolute percentage error.
Yeah, MAPE. It simply asks, on average, by what percentage did the estimation deviate from the true laboratory measurement?
And the initial findings were highly problematic for the wearable technology camp.
Oh, they look terrible.
They did. The traditional YYR2 field test had a baseline MAP of 4.2% compared to the lab analysis. But when the researchers analyzed the data after the athlete's very first 10-minute run with the smartwatch,
Wait for it.
the watch produced an error rate of 5.58%.
Ouch.
Yeah, in raw physiological terms, it was an average difference of negative 3.16 milliliters per minute per kilogram. The smartwatch was actively worse than the field test.
Which is wild, because if this study had concluded at that exact moment, the definitive scientific consensus would be that consumer wearables have absolutely no place in elite sports diagnostics.
None at all.
But the researchers picked up on a subtle hint in the manufacturer's manual. Garmin suggests that the VO₂max assessment might, quote-unquote, improve after a couple of outdoor runs.
So they tested that theory.
They did. A few days later, they randomly selected 16 of the players and had them perform a second, identical 10-minute warm-up run wearing the device.
And the delta between the first run and the second run is the definitive revelation of this entire paper.
The mathematical improvement was just staggering. After that second run, the smartwatch's error rate plummeted from 5.58% down to a phenomenal 1.06%.
That is a massive jump in accuracy.
Right. The raw difference, compared to the exhausting lab test, shrank to a minuscule 0.12 milliliters per minute per kilogram. Almost overnight, the non-fatiguing 10-minute jog became vastly more accurate than the brutal, exhausting beep test.
Which is incredible.
I honestly found myself trying to conceptualize how a machine suddenly becomes 5 times more accurate just by repeating the same 10-minute jog.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, but I think the best analogy is the predictive text algorithm on a brand new smartphone.
Oh, okay.
Like when you first unbox it, the phone doesn't know your specific syntax. It suggests strange robotic words when you try to type a message.
Right, it doesn't sound like you at all.
Exactly. But after you use it for a few days, the algorithm maps your individual vocabulary patterns, and suddenly it finishes your sentences perfectly. The Garmin algorithm seems to be doing the exact same thing with human physiology. It needs to, learn your biometric language.
That's a great analogy. Though the scientific community has to operate with a degree of caution when making those comparisons.
Why is that?
Primarily because companies like Garmin guard their proprietary algorithms as strictly as state secrets.
Ah, right. Intellectual property.
Exactly. The smartwatch is a total black box for independent researchers. We can observe the raw data going in, the heart rate and the GPS velocity, and we can observe the VO₂max estimate coming out, but the specific mathematical alchemy occurring on the silicon chip is hidden.
So we're just guessing how it works.
Essentially. However, Your predictive text analogy aligns perfectly with the data. The algorithm clearly requires a critical mass of individual data points to refine its estimation.
So it needs to map the precise relationship between an athlete's specific heart rate response and their specific running speed over multiple varied sessions to dial in the accuracy.
Exactly.
Okay, hang on, I have to stop you there because we need to address a glaring contradiction in the study's findings.
Okay, let's hear it.
You just said the error rate dropped to roughly 1%.
I did.
In almost any context, a test that is 99% accurate is a massive triumph. Yet, when the researchers ran their secondary statistical analysis, they concluded the smartwatch only had moderate reliability.
Right.
How can a test be 99% accurate but only moderately reliable? Those two things sound completely contradictory to me.
It is a counterintuitive statistical phenomenon for sure,
Yeah.
but it makes perfect sense when you understand the metric they used, which is the intra-class correlation coefficient, or ICC.
Okay, unpack that for me.
While the MAP tells us how close the average guess was to the true value, the ICC measures the consistency of the ranking. It asks, if I measure these 24 athletes multiple times, how consistently will the smartwatch rank player A above player B compared to how the gold standard lab test ranked them?
Okay, got it.
An ICC score closer to 1.0 indicates excellent reliability. The smartwatch, despite its tiny error rate, only achieved an ICC of 0.54, which is statistically mediocre.
I'm still struggling to bridge the gap between the tiny error and the mediocre reliability score.
Well, it comes entirely down to the specific group of humans they were testing. Remember, this sample consisted of 24 elite youth soccer players.
Right.
They are highly trained, national-level athletes who have survived a rigorous academy selection process. Because of that biological filtering, they are an incredibly homogeneous group. Their VO₂max scores were overwhelmingly similar, averaging 56.6, with a very tight standard deviation.
I see the mechanical problem now. Let's imagine you have a slightly imprecise measuring tape,
Okay.
and you are trying to measure the height of 24 professional basketball players who are all between 6'6" and 6'8".
Right, very similar heights.
Because they are so incredibly similar in height that slight imprecision in your tape measure is going to cause you to constantly mix up their exact rankings from test to test.
Yes.
Your reliability score will be terrible. But if you take that exact same imprecise tape measure and use it on a diverse group of 24 people whose heights range from 4 feet to 7 feet tall, the measuring tape will easily rank them in the correct order every single time.
Giving you a perfect reliability score. That is the exact mathematical prep of the intra-class correlation coefficient.
Wow.
When the biological variance within the test group is exceptionally narrow, the statistical formula struggles to demonstrate high reliability even if the absolute error is practically non-existent.
That is fascinating.
And furthermore, a sample size of 24 humans, while impressive for a study requiring intense elite athlete participation, is still statistically tiny.
Which heavily suppresses the ICC score.
Exactly. The moderate reliability rating does not mean the watch is broken. It just means we must interpret that specific number through the lens of a highly elite, tightly packed sample group.
Okay, with all of the complex biological mechanisms and statistical nuances laid out on the table, we need to transition away from the spreadsheets and back to the reality of the soccer pitch.
The practical application.
Exactly. What is the ultimate verdict for the sports practitioner, the coach, or the data-obsessed athlete listening right now? Can we finally throw away the masks and ditch the exhausting lab tests entirely?
The verdict is a highly qualified yes, but only if practitioners adhere to two absolute non-negotiable rules dictated by this research.
Let's hear them.
Rule number 1, you can never trust the data from a new athlete's first run. You must subject the athlete to a minimum of 2 separate running sessions to allow the black box algorithm sufficient time to calibrate to their unique physiological profile.
Right, you have to let the predictive text learn your language.
Precisely. And rule number 2, you must provide the algorithm with a truly accurate maximum heart rate. If a coach relies on generic, population-level formulas to determine an elite athlete's max heart rate, they are feeding the algorithm poisoned data.
And the watch will happily process that bad data and return highly accurate nonsense.
Exactly. But even if a coach follows those 2 rules perfectly, there is a lingering danger hidden in the data visualization.
The Bland-Altman plots.
Yes. The researchers utilized a tool called a Bland-Altman plot to analyze the results, and it's brilliant because it refuses to let the researchers hide behind a team average.
It plots every single individual player's data point, right?
Right. It shows the limits of agreement, meaning it reveals exactly how far off any one specific person might be from the gold standard, regardless of how good the team looked as a whole.
And what did those plots reveal?
They revealed a critical vulnerability in the technology. While the average error across the entire roster of 24 players was a microscopic 1%, the confidence intervals were troublingly wide.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning that for any given individual player on any given Tuesday, the Smartwatch algorithm could occasionally spit out a wildly inaccurate physiological reading.
Wow. And this highlights the absolute necessity of human oversight in modern sports science.
It really does.
Because we are operating in an era of data-informed training, not data-dictated training. The wearable device is a tool, not an infallible oracle.
Perfectly said.
If a practitioner is monitoring a star athlete who has been dominating matches all month, and suddenly the smartwatch insists their VO₂max is plummeted by 15 points, the practitioner cannot blindly panic and alter the athlete's training load.
Right. You have to apply human intuition, recognize an implausible data point, and then go verify it.
And how do you verify an anomaly? You take the athlete off the pitch, put them back into the laboratory, and run the grueling gold standard treadmill test.
Exactly. The smartwatch drastically reduces the frequency of exhaustive lab testing, but it fundamentally cannot eliminate the need for the lab as the ultimate arbiter of truth.
Right. It's a filter, not a replacement.
And we also must acknowledge the inherent fragility of this kind of validation research.
Oh, because tech moves so fast.
Yes. This 2024 study is merely a snapshot in time. The researchers painstakingly validated one specific software version, software 13.00 rare, running on one specific piece of hardware, the Garmin Forerunner 245.
Right.
Furthermore, they only validated its accuracy within a very specific VO₂max range of roughly 49 to 69 milliliters per minute per kilogram, specifically on highly trained male youths.
So the moment Garmin pushes a silent over-the-air update to software 14.00, or the moment a coach tries to use a different brand of watch on a female athlete, or on an amateur runner with a vastly lower VO₂max, the mathematical accuracy validated in this study could completely evaporate.
It absolutely could. The scientific community is trapped in a permanent, exhausting game of catch-up. Independent researchers spend months designing rigorous trials to validate an algorithm, only for the tech company in Silicon Valley to secretly tweak the code the very next day.
That has to be so frustrating for scientists.
It is, and it forces us to confront a much broader, almost philosophical shift in how we interact with our own biology.
How so?
Well, we are living through an era where wearable technology is evolving at an unprecedented velocity. These devices have rapidly transitioned from rudimentary step counters into highly sophisticated analytical tools capable of replicating rigorous, previously agonizing laboratory diagnostics.
And they're doing it while we barely break a sweat.
Exactly. And, the convenience is undeniably revolutionary for both the elite athlete and the everyday consumer.
Oh, for sure. It's amazing tech.
It is revolutionary, but it comes with a psychological cost. As these devices become increasingly capable, we are fundamentally altering our daily relationship with our own physiological data.
Because we just trust the watch.
Right. When we outsource our bodily self-awareness to proprietary algorithms that operate inside locked black boxes, we risk becoming completely reliant on digital numbers we don't actually understand.
That's a profound point.
We must ask ourselves, are these devices actually granting us a deeper insight into our own health? Or are we simply surrendering our human intuition to the next mandatory software update?
Wow. That is a brilliant and necessary question for all of you to consider the next time you check your wrists. If you want to dive deeper into the methodology of this experiment, if you want to examine those complex bland Altmann plots for yourself, or if you want to explore the dense statistical nuances of the intraclass correlation coefficient scores,
which I highly recommend doing.
Absolutely. I highly encourage you to read the full original article by Düking and his colleagues. The depth of their work offers a phenomenal template for how we should rigorously evaluate digital health claims. Thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. Make sure you follow the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next in-depth scientific exploration. We will see